VapourNvim will be the last Neovim distribution that we look at in this series. Notice on my screen that the author of this is a passionate 13-year-old dev and Vim lover. I couldn't pass up looking at the code behind this particular Neovim kit. I've seen several of Neil's videos. He hasn't been publishing much for the last 9 months or so. That's because he got into high school and he's been too busy with his high school work and his exams to continue doing videos and support this site. But I did want to take a look at it because we can learn some pretty cool things from it. So the first thing we're going to do is hop over and show you that the last package that we looked at was my installation of Packer using my setup for my personalization. Now we're going to switch to Vapour, and we're just going to bootstrap it. This one is using Packer, and you're going to see down in the lower right hand corner, Packer is now bootstrapping his environment, and you're going to see that the plugins are loaded. It loaded up pretty quickly, which was very nice. We will exit Vim, and we'll get all the way out of Neovim, and we're going to go right back in, and we will notice that it loads a lot of languages for tree sitter. So it's going to load 159 of them, so it's all possible languages. Now that all the languages are loaded for tree sitter, we'll go right back into Neovim and we'll see if which key is available. Which key is there? Hit the backspace key. We can see all the keystrokes and things that we can possibly do with tree sitter. I happen to notice that he uses an explorer as well, so we do leader E, we can bring up the explorer. I'm going to go through some of the plugins that he's set up, which are kind of interesting in the way they work. I just do leader FF and it takes us right to a find. Let's look for the word key. Okay, he's got which key. Let's take a look at the key bindings and just bring that file up because it's small. We can take a quick look at it. I happen to notice on which key that he's got focus. So let's take a look at focus and see what that does. We can turn on Zen mode. So let's turn on Zen mode. I thought that was really cool. I have never used this before. I've never used Zen mode, but I like it. I'm going to incorporate this into my practice now. There are times when I want my screen centered like this and I don't want any distractions around me. My personal preference would probably have line numbers on. I don't know why, I just like line numbers, so I'd probably turn line numbers on. But if we navigate through this buffer, you're also going to notice things get highlighted, so I've never done that. It's interesting the way that works. That's the focus command Twilight. So I've never used Twilight, so I thought it was kind of interesting that you can turn that and turn that off. I'm not sure about that one. It's a neat concept. I just don't know. I'd have to experiment with it a little bit more. But I have a feeling if we do leader ZZ, it's going to take us back. So if we look at this, go back to this init file, this one is just requiring Vapour. So his entire setup, we're going to go and see that it's in the Lua Vapour, and in this directory we're going to find an init file. So there it is right there, so we can bring that up and find out what's happening with the overall configuration. So we can see he's got options, he's got some language server set up right here. So it's got the older name for Lua. We can see the JSON OLS down on line 25. If we go down to line 34 and bring that up to the top of the screen, we're going to see that he's got a plugin table that he's loaded, and each item can be enabled or disabled. Kind of a nice feature. I was doing something similar with my customized flag, but we'll also notice in his in the plugins file, we'll notice the use of these flags. So that's kind of cool the way this has been set up as well. A couple of things that I also noticed was he's got some floating terminal capability in here, which I have not ever used. It's just, again, that's not been part of my workflow. So the keystrokes for that was leader T for terminal, and then we're going to create a floating window. Now, this is using the built-in terminal capability of Neovim. I've never used it. It's pretty cool, but I know this is just a shell into my bash prompt, so I expect to be able to do things like bash top and see what's going on with my CPU. And sure enough, it comes up and it works. That also means I can do some really crazy things, so you need to be really careful with this. Okay, I am going to start tmux. Okay, tmux worked. I'm going to do a split. I'm going to do Neovim over here, and I'm going to switch to the other window. Okay, so you can see that I am in Neovim. I created a terminal, I ran tmux, and I did a split. Now, I probably can do a leader TT, and there you go. I've got another. But you notice I am in tmux, so this can get recursive really, really quickly. So you need to be really careful if you start doing tmux, or you start doing terminal tmux and terminals and nvim, you can get yourself in a mess in a hurry, which I did preparing for this video, by the way. So we're going to get out of all this completely, and we're going to be right back to where we left off. So next we're going to take a look at LazyGit, and that was leader TL. So now we have the LazyGit automatically brought up for us, which again, very cool. So these, I might actually incorporate this into my workflow because I found them so useful. I do use LazyGit from the command prompt. That simply saves me creating a shell. My normal workflow would be something like create a shell and then type LazyGit. Okay, I'm not in a Git repository. Is it okay? Yeah, get out, whatever. And then, but this, if I just need to take a look at LazyGit for the directory I'm currently in, this is a really sweet implementation right here. Leader TL, there we go. So that's a really cool implementation that I think I'll incorporate that into my workflow just from actually experimenting with this. I also use Ranger a lot. I would do a similar workflow. I'd either navigate to another desktop, launch a terminal, and then type Ranger. Now I can do leader TR, and I've got Ranger running. So that's pretty cool. So if I go into there, yeah, I got some stuff going on. That's pretty cool. So I will definitely incorporate the LazyGit and Ranger into my personal workflow. And I discovered that from looking at this code base preparing for this video. This is something I would have never thought of doing, but it's such a sweet implementation, why not? Give it a try, and if you use it, you use it. If you don't, stop using it. That's cool. So a couple other things to note in here is that he's got a lot of information for tree sitter in here on how he wants tree sitter set up, and his other plugins are all right here. So it's really kind of nice the way this has been done. A lot of nice setup in here. You notice he's using his color schemes are in here, so that's all kind of nice. So what we want to look at next is we want to go ahead and take a look at the plugins, and this is going to tie together how he sets his plugins up and the way he uses the configuration of that plugin. So if we notice in here, we're gonna find in his plugins that when he starts the Packer startup, he's using information coming from his other package. So on line 29, we're going to see this is enabled flag. So it's passing in the name of a plugin, and then he's using his plugins array from the Vapour, and then he's checking to see if it's enabled or not. So if from a use standpoint, if we look for this is enabled flag, we can see that it's used throughout his code base to enable or disable a plugin. It's a really cool implementation, the way he's done that. And he's also got some dependencies tied together with, like, for example, in this case you're seeing he's using Twilight from folke, and it requires a Twilight config, which is kind of nice the way he's done that. So it's very understandable, it's very readable in the way he's done this. So learned a lot in looking at this, just looking at different ways people set things up, and not just looking at that, but actually running their implementation. And remember, that's what this series was all about, is actually demonstrating how easy it is to use somebody else's distribution. I will now review some code changes that I made to address deprecated warnings as well as formatting only for demonstration purposes. So on line 12, you see that I made a format only change, and I did this so it was easier for me to talk about the different things I was seeing in the code base. The next change that we're going to look at is on line 36. I dealt with the deprecated notices of the server capabilities property changing, so I took care of that, nothing else. And we're going to do the live grep again, and we're going to look for Bootstrap. So you're going to notice several files change. The one we want to start with is bail. So in this particular context, every one of these changes is simply checking for the flag nvim.g.nvim bootstrap, is it equal to 1? If that's true, it bails. The reason you do that is so that when Packer is installing things, you don't want that to be accessed prior to Packer sync occurring. So if I look through the code, what we're going to see is that's at the top of every file. And that's all I've done to them. Okay. So it's a simple little change. Adding that gives me the ability to correctly bootstrap this. I made a pull request. I'm hoping it will be accepted. The final bootstrap changes we'll look at were all made in the pack plugin init file. So if we bring that file up, so you can see on line 2, I'm just quiescing the undefined global variable, so this code is easier to look at when we're doing videos. The next change was on line 10. And on this particular line, what we're doing is we're setting a flag letting us know that the bootstrap is taking place. And then the block on 18 was the else clause. So if we're already bootstrapped, if Packer's already installed, we simply set the flag to a 0. At the end of this file, we're going to see right before the Packer table is done, the very last thing we're doing is we're going to call Packer sync. And so with that being called, it allows Packer to operate correctly. So if we just simply do a switchNeovim to vapour, we know that's what ran already, but it's going to force that environment to get deleted, and we're seeing it bootstrap, and we're not getting any errors at all. So when this is done and we get out, we would be completely bootstrapped. In this final wrap-up, I will review how I made it possible for me to seamlessly and easily move from one Neovim environment to another. Recall the setNeovim environment function orchestrates removing all the parts of the existing Neovim environment, uses the remove Neovim configuration function to remove the directory if it exists, and that removes the cache, the config, the local share, the local state with the mvim the Neovim installation that we're operating with. And recall, that is just a tracking file, so it's the location of where your Neovim environment is running from. The next thing we do is I give you a list of all the packages that I currently support. So in the final choice section, you can see that anything that was part of this series was set Neovim environment on lines 3 through 12. And then down in line 14, we always have the ability to get back to a default Neovim environment as if Packer or Lazy had never been used. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. Remember, this is a 7-part video series where I'm covering different Neovim installations. Give me a like, give me a subscribe. I've got a new microphone, so I'd like to get feedback on whether the audio quality is improving. Thanks again for watching. This is Traap. I'm out. May God bless you.